I'm a DJ boy, going to Dcentral, minty NFT, from the DeFi, being crypto poor but JPay rich.
I'm going to introduce our next speaker. He is speaking on the interoperability of DeFi. We love this word, interoperability, how to go from one chain to the next, moving your data, moving your assets, moving anything that you want, and making that connection, that bridge between the different worlds that these blockchains are creating. So please join me in giving a hand to fun name, OX Brainjar.
Good evening, everybody. I'm the founder and CEO of Composable Finance, and today I'm before you representing our entire team and speaking about our mission to create the next generation of adoption across the cryptocurrency ecosystem. Composable Finance is solely focused on a single mission, which is to bring about interoperable infrastructure for modular DeFi. Now, what does that actually mean? In a world in which DeFi is quite difficult to actually navigate, there is limited ways for people to actually understand and actually be able to dive into DeFi and crypto as a whole, given there's such a high barrier to entry. And if we're going to bring about a world in which users, any user that's interested in finding financial freedom can utilize DeFi, we need to fundamentally re-examine our predecessors in the equities market to actually understand how can we bring about next level adoption. Now, in the early days of the equities market, there was primarily several different markets, but they were all fragmented. There was NYSE, NASDAQ. It was only when there was the DTCC that came across that started to actually perform reconciliations. Now, reconciliation is really important because of the fact that that allows for all these different markets to now become cohesive and talk to each other as opposed to a world in which these different markets are segmented. What this then brought upon was a world of high-frequency trading, dark pools, and other new technological innovations built upon this reconciliation infrastructure. This allowed for these traders to benefit from these market inefficiencies, but the bigger picture is that these solutions could now be created, such as Robinhood, such as retail solutions, such as retail equity trading. Things like Robinhood would be nowhere near as successful if this infrastructure hadn't been built to allow for market depth, order routing, and a complete unification of the equities market for the exhaustive and sort of all-consuming craze that, of course, now is the equities market. So to do this, we sort of, instead of kind of rewriting and looking for a brand new strategy, we learned from our predecessors and are now sort of creating a cross-chain ecosystem and infrastructure to be able to bring upon this same level of efficiency and unification that our predecessors in the equities market brought upon. So Composable Finance is fundamentally focused on creating modular functionality, so a world in which you can specify what you'd like to accomplish as opposed to how. To do so, we're cultivating a rich ecosystem of two parachains, a cross-chain virtual machine, the first cross-ecosystem example of IBC, bridging the Cosmos ecosystem to the Polkadot ecosystem, a substrate-specific Oracle infrastructure, an AMM, and several other additional pallets in these chains to really sort of concretely put our flag in the sand and say, this is how the future of DeFi should be, architected in a very methodical manner. And discussing this in a bit more depth, this is our architecture. At the top of this architecture is an orchestration layer. It's what we call the cross-chain virtual machine, XCVM. This is focused on allowing developers to specify functions as general as swap, lend, borrow, and be able to not have to deal with which chain should I deploy this on, which protocol should I tap into, which assets should I allow users to support. This instead becomes abstracted not just for the developer but also for the user, again through this technical stack. Once these instructions are put together and deployed onto our parachain in the form of an XCVM contract, which is CosmWasm based, it then passes through our routing layer, which actually creates the instruction set by competitively analyzing the infinitely many routes for a user, say, wanting to LP for some percentage APY. Thereafter, these instructions are broadcasted using IBC and other transport layers to multiple different ecosystems. And all of this is then underpinned by our infrastructure, which is our two Polkadot parachains, Kusama parachain and Polkadot parachain. Now, diving a little bit deeper, so far in the cross-chain ecosystem, and also let's just take a step back, why do we actually care about cross-chain? The only way that we're going to actually get user abstraction and user efficiency is a world in which cross-chain applications run wild, making use of primitives that have already been built over the past runs of crypto and DeFi to then allow for users to specify, again, here's what I'd like to do, not necessarily how I'd like to do it. So traditionally, other solutions that claim to be creating cross-chain applications are more focused on just creating glue code. You must deploy your protocol on multiple different ecosystems and then implement glue code between each of these different instances to allow them to talk to each other. For us, we instead take a top-down approach. We say, deploy a contract on our parachain that specifies these different generalizable functions, and then from there, information is passed from multiple different ecosystems to allow for exactly what the developer has specified to occur. And again, just a reiteration here, we are much more than just glue code in this point. We are now becoming the orchestration layer and framework for interoperability itself. So just diving a little bit deeper into how this actually works. So again, a user deploys an XCVM contract onto the Polkadot parachain. Thereafter, these instructions are curated by the routing layer, which are then propagated using IBC across multiple different ecosystems, and execution can now happen on multiple different chains. The beauty of this is now we can sort of abstract state transition functions and general functionality for DeFi across multiple different ecosystems, but have them sort of all be able to communicate and interact with one another in an asynchronous manner. So a perfect example of this is how does one build a leveraged yield farming application? Well, using other cross-chain solutions, you would basically have to write contracts on multiple chains and then essentially glue, contract A to contract C, contract A to contract B, and go through this sort of iterative process. For us, you instead specify, what are the components of leveraged yield farming, swap, lend, liquidity provide, and essentially allow for users to then be able to connect their wallet from any ecosystem to tap into this type of contract. Now, running through this very brief example, what this allows for is a user to deposit their funds into a contract, and an LP token is printed, resulting in a loan being taken out on another chain and then reprovisioned, and the whole cycle sort of continues. And again, a key sort of piece to highlight is that this is all happening at the contract level, as opposed to having to say, let me stitch A to B to C. So how far away are we from something like this? Obviously, if XCVM is to hit the market, then we could see, I think, obviously from my predictions, I firmly believe that something like XCVM would bring upon unprecedented aggregation of not only markets, but also brand new user experiences that are completely unseen in the crypto ecosystem today. Ideas such as I want to be able to LP and not have to select AVAX or some other chain or have to deal with any of that complexity, this really introduces a whole brand new paradigm for crypto as a whole. So July 1st, we will be demoing what this actually looks like at our first event, inaugural Unchained event in Berlin on July 1st. Thereafter, we will be deploying Cosm Wasm on our Picasso parachain, again, our Kusama parachain. From there, we're also going to be rolling out our bridge to the Cosmos ecosystem, again, bringing IBC to multiple ecosystems, starting with Polkadot, and thereafter rolling out XCBM. So to recap, I think what I first said at the beginning of this presentation is crypto at this point is a very gated ecosystem. You need to understand MetaMask, you need to understand Kepler, multiple different wallet infrastructures, RPC providers, protocols, and you have to spend a lot of time doing research to actually understand what it is you'd like to accomplish and how you'd like to accomplish it. That world cannot continue. And today I'm saying that we essentially want to take the world of DeFi to the next level by saying now users can specify, hey, I'd like to accomplish X, and the rest is abstracted away through this infrastructure that we're building. Thank you.